Hi, everybody. My name is Tobe, and I am an Extension Specialist working with Michigan State University Extension, as well as an Assistant Professor with Human Development and Family Studies. And I have been doing education ever since I graduated from my undergraduate degree. I actually started as a community educator down in Branch County, Coldwater, Michigan. I worked there for a couple years. I worked in Ann Arbor for about a year and a half. And then I came on campus working at Michigan State as a program leader and really kind of working with our MSU Extension programs. And Bill's actually going to talk a little bit about some of the programs that we've done. But my whole interest and my whole area for many, many years has really been thinking about financial education, home ownership education, and how can we really think about education as a way of really helping people move into a better situation for themselves. So I really kind of start with education because that's kind of where I'm grounded from and really where I've done a lot of the work that I have. But there's been some interesting research lately. Back in 2015, the FINRA National Financial Capability Study was completed. And this assessment really looked at families across the country to find out what are some of the things that can help people and where are they standing with their financial capability, being able to really sustain given what they had. And I actually pulled out 3 of the questions and have the Michigan results here because I think it's particularly interesting. And I will tell you that our Michigan results are very similar to the national results that they actually found. So the first question they asked is, in a typical month, how difficult is it for you to cover your expenses and pay all your bills? 39% of the Michigan residents, and 500 people were actually assessed in the state of Michigan, said somewhat difficult. 11% said very difficult. Okay, so that's a fairly large portion that have difficulty in making ends meet and paying their bills each month. Then we see, how confident are you that you could come up with $2,000 if an unexpected need arose within the next month? 15% said probably not, and 23% said certainly not in the state of Michigan. Again, very concerning results when we think about coming up with $2,000. So what does $2,000 mean, right? That's a car fixing issue. That's an emergency that all of a sudden comes up where a family's not able to come up with the dollars to be able to help with this. Then we see, have you set aside emergency or rainy day funds that would cover your expenses for 3 months in case of sickness, job loss, economic downturn, and other emergencies? 49% of Michigan residents, 500 people that were assessed, said no. So, have we ever experienced any kind of an economic downturn? Yeah. You know, we definitely had. So this was done in 2015, where times have been better, right? We should kind of be having a more opportunity. More people are in jobs. We've kind of faced that recession in our state. But we still have a high percentage that are saying no to that particular question. So it's disconcerting when we start to look at this, right? So this whole financial capability assessment is really saying, well, wait a minute. Financial education might not just be the way to go. Maybe we have to pair it with other things to really think about how we're going to really reach this. And so it's really taking a look at what's called financial capability. Financial education plus that applied piece. How can we help people make the changes and see the actual results? It's not just giving the education anymore. We have to help empower them to figure out how we can actually do that. Okay? So then there's also theory and thinking about, well, we have to do this just-in-time education, right? We got to get people when they particularly need that particular type of information. So it's working with people when they have that particular need, okay? So maybe it's Dr. Sykes' research and looking at EITC and doing some education. So they're getting that refund. Now what are you going to do with it? And helping people think about planning. But just-in-time education has some issues too, because it negates the opportunity for planning and preparation. Okay, if we're not giving people that opportunity to kind of think about what's going on, how are we going to really have people develop goals, which is really one of the core principles in thinking about financial education. Okay, so is education enough? Well, I'd love to think so, but I think there's other things that are going to be at play as well. So one of the things I want to talk about today is really some research that I did. And this was part of my dissertation in getting my PhD a couple years ago. But it was really looking at people who had gone through financial counseling, foreclosure counseling, back in 2010, okay, when we had difficult financial situations in our state. And it was looking at the situation of families that were going through. And I actually interviewed a sample of families 3 years later, because I wanted to find out what helped you get through the particular situation that you had during that time. What were some of the factors that really helped you get to the point where you are now a functioning member in our society? Okay, and we had people, and this was working with a local foreclosure counseling site. They had seen within a 6-month time period, I had around 350 families that had gone through this foreclosure counseling. And I actually interviewed these families 3 different times. So I actually interviewed 4 families to really find out what was happening. With these particular families, one of them went through a short sale. 2 of them were actually able to go back and get a loan modification as far as the result that was able to occur. And then the final individual actually completed the foreclosure. Okay, so I wanted to find out what was happening. And what was really interesting about this is that really kind of finding out what were those protective factors that helped people. And it was things like role of family. So it's some of those things that a lot of times money can't buy. It's the things like a source of strength, okay? Having the ability to be able to count on family members when times were tough. Living for others. We saw this with family members who had children, really saying, you know what, times were tough. It wasn't easy to go through that situation, but the fact that I was able to lean on my kids needed me for support, I was able to get through the situation that I was going through. Another big thing was the importance of healthy relationships prior to the crisis. All of the people that I talked to said, if I didn't have that good relationship, I never would have turned to that particular person for help. And they all had somebody that they could rely on, because trying to be able to figure out what they were going to do and get out of that situation, they really needed that social support. Importance of faith was really, really big. Okay? Having that opportunity, and some of the people frankly said, I'm not a religious person, but I started thinking about what were some of the opportunities that I needed to think about within faith in my community. It really made me look internal. So they talked about the fact of faith as being a religious or a very non-religious or non-spiritual opportunity of really just having an introspective look in themselves. Okay? We also saw a lot with the importance of income supports. And income supports meant a lot of different things. Okay? It may have been an EITC. It may have been the loan modification that they were able to get. Okay? It may have been the community nonprofit that they could go to be able to get food on that weekly basis, or be able to go to get some support. So income supports was really kind of a general term to think about what they could really do to kind of help them get through that particular process. And then the final thing was the importance of a positive attitude and motivation. Okay? That if they felt like they could get through it, that was something that was really going to help them out. Okay? It was that can-do attitude. And very different situations. Of all the people I actually interviewed, all 4 of them, this was a Metro Detroit community, actually had lost their jobs. So all of them were going through some kind of an income loss, income reduction, and had come out the other side as a part of it. But none of them were actually involved in the automotive industry, which was interesting. So really interesting with income supports. This was a quote from one of the participants. They said, it's like you have a family member in the hospital, and that person was in the hospital for a very long time. And come to find out there was a miracle cure for that person. And then all of a sudden, that person got a shot and they were healthy. Okay? And that's really what that income support felt for that particular family member, that they were able to kind of position themselves and move forward. So some of the findings I saw were things like the importance of understanding the reason. Why did they get in the situation that they did? Okay? Being able to understand what happened was really clear for them to be able to understand and come to peace with the situation that they were going through. Importance of the family composition and family support, so who they could lean on and what that family was really comprised of. And then also importance of income and income supports. And then finally, the last one on there is age as a factor. Okay, the fact that if somebody was older, it was a little bit more difficult to come to the realization, the loss of memories, the grief that was attached to the particular home, and being able to get out of the situation that they were in. So some of the implications that I think for practitioners, if you're going to kind of move this forward and think about, okay, so what are some of the things that we need to do? It really comes down to 2 different things. It comes down to the what and the how. Okay, so understanding the experience of families. So the fact that people had to kind of navigate this new reality all of a sudden, and these were all people that typically had never gone to any kind of social support before. They had never stepped foot in a community organization. They'd never asked for help from anybody. So getting over that stigma of having to do that was a huge step. Understanding the element of time. People didn't have a lot of time to figure out what they were going to do. Okay, when somebody's going through foreclosure, a lot of times they said they just kind of happened to see the letter. They kind of happened to stumble across to the counseling office, and they were under a lot of stress. Okay, they had creditors contacting them, a lot of different things going on. So the element of time and being able to react, dealing with the stress that they had, was very, very difficult. And then the role of the system, okay? So the system could be a lot of things. It could be the foreclosure system. It could be working with the lenders if a loan modification was possible. It was working kind of within the constraints of what was going on. And so one of the quotes I have here says, families have to understand what happened. Do some reflection. It's important to understand what the situation is now, and also how can we create an alternative future. And really thinking about the fact that this doesn't kind of say who I am, and really kind of own that situation, but also understand how did I get here and how can I prevent that from happening. And then the other piece was really kind of thinking about this importance of information. And so a lot of them said, you know, financial education is important. There's pieces that I wish I would have had a little bit better job. I thought I was doing okay, but it wasn't until I had financial constraints that I really needed to kind of think about goal setting or improving my credit and doing creative strategies to be able to make that happen. You know, understanding who to go to. Who are the resources, the networks in the community? We always think we do a really good job of communicating that, but for people that aren't typically tapped into that system, they may not be aware of who to go to and who might be those resources. And so having kind of a real clear understanding of what that is really important. And then the need for post-transition support, okay? Especially with foreclosure counseling, we saw that we did a really good job of helping people when they were in the counseling situation. They got whatever situation they had, they walked out the door. But now they had to figure out that new financial reality, right? They needed to kind of figure out how they were going to get by. And so people really said, I wish somebody would have just called me and said, hey, how are things going? You know, how's your financial situation looking? How's your budget looking? Can we kind of touch base and really see where you're at? And there wasn't funding to do that, okay? So kind of that funding constraint of being able to do that. And so they were saying, you know, we need to follow up with families to find out what happened, okay? Because a lot of times that doesn't always occur. So a couple things I want to talk about, because we don't always have funding at our disposal, right? There could be other ways that we can think about doing this. And so this research actually crossed my desk. This is not mine this past week, but I think it's really interesting. It's talking about this role of a nudge, okay? So it could be some kind of a behavioral approach to think about what could be a way that you could do things a little bit different, might not cost a ton of money, but just the way you're wording things to clientele to make it more approachable for them. So there's examples here of things that you can do, and actually I posted the link on my slide so you can actually see this assessment, but it's things like Texas mailed to incarcerated parents who owed child support a postcard that included the line, other parents have had courts lower their child support. And so people had gone in to try to do that, and again, it's a simple approach to be able to do. Other things like Ohio sent a monthly reminder through mail, robocall, or text messages to parents who owed child support, but were not getting any other monthly invoice to remind them to pay. So just getting that monthly invoice information, they were able to prompt to be able to do that. Another example of a nudge in my financial world is student loans. Indiana University decided that their default rate and their rate for people taking on student loans was much too high. They have a lot of different satellite universities, and so one of the things that they did is they just sent a simple letter alerting students of the amount of debt they had taken on each year. And basically, as a way to be able to do that, they actually dropped federal undergraduate Stafford loan disbursements at the public university dropped 11% in that 9-month period that ended March 31st. Okay, again, a simple letter, and all it said is, this is how much debt you've taken on, this is what you're going to potentially have to pay back. Very simple, letting people know, but it gave people a wake-up call before they had gotten into debt. Very easy to do, it's a letter that you can have. Now, another one from our program down in Macomb County is a really good example. We have a great relationship with the Macomb County Treasurer, with our MSU Extension Office. And one of the things that we've been able to do is track all the people that have gone through property tax delinquency. So people who are going through, they have unpaid property taxes. The treasurer is actually referring their participants to the Macomb MSU Extension Office. And what we've been able to do is actually go back and see how many property taxes have been paid back. And one of the really cool things is we've been able to show Macomb County since 2013, they've been able to get $1.6 million back as part of the process. A lot of what it was done was just counseling, education, as well as helping people access the step forward dollars that were available. So thank you very much.